I'm going to start with you, my friend. Where does Ted Cruz stand? Do you have any idea?
Well, historically, Ted Cruz was actually behind a path, at least a path to citizenship or some kind of legalization during the Bush administration, supported the Bush policies during the Bush administration when he was in Texas. During the Gang of Eight bill, he appeared to oppose the overall bill, but he was in favor of bringing in more foreign workers under certain programs, and he seemed to be in favor of a path to legalization without citizenship. He had an amendment to do that. Clearly, look, all these candidates have changed their positions. Marco Rubio, no doubt about it. Ted Cruz. What Ted Cruz demonstrated earlier in Iowa is that working with Jeff Sessions and the very influential Steve King in Iowa on the immigration issue at a time when immigration is on the top of voters' minds is a very powerful political issue. But if you believe that Ted Cruz is not going to change his position once he's getting elected, well, I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you.
Yeah, it says, you know, I talk about Brooklyn. That's where you're from, Michael.
Absolutely.
And we know we're inundated with illegal aliens in Brooklyn.
You bet.
And everywhere in the United States of America. I mean, he's flip-flopping. Pure flip-flop. I don't care what anybody else says. What's your take on him?
I think it goes beyond flip-flopping. The language is so nuanced. He made a statement not long ago that there's nothing compassionate about allowing illegal aliens to take the jobs of Americans. Why not say there's nothing compassionate about allowing foreign workers to displace American workers? He wants a 500% increase in the number of H-1B visas. We've heard much about that for the high-tech workers. He wants to double legal immigration. And his all-consuming focus on the Mexican border ignores the fact that we're a country of 50 border states. They just released a study that every year, roughly 500,000 more illegal aliens enter the United States who will legally admit it and violate the terms of their admission. So none of the candidates are talking about the need to enforce our immigration laws from within the interior. And that's really the critical issue. It's not about adding more Border Patrol agents. It's about enforcing the laws because inevitably aliens who are determined to come here will. But we need to police the system by which they remain in the United States. And this is what the 9/11 Commission warned about.
Let me also, I'm going to play a clip right now about the H-1B visas, about an amendment that Cruz put forward for that 500% increase, and then supported it again May of 2015. But then in August, all of a sudden, it was just a joke. Play the clip.
I would note that among the amendments that I've introduced are two amendments to expand legal immigration, and one of those two, every member on the Democratic side of the aisle voted against, said no, we don't want more high-skilled immigrants here, and voted not to increase high-skilled temporary workers by 500%. This is an issue that is near and dear to many of us on this committee. It is near and dear and personal to a great many of us. And the purpose of the amendments that I have introduced here are to fix the problem.
So, Dan, you hear in this clip that he obviously was putting forward for 325,000 people per year to basically raid Silicon Valley. I mean, are we in a situation right now as a country where we are graduating more STEM workers, more STEM graduates than jobs available? I mean, how bad of a move would that be for the American worker, especially in our high-tech field, if that sort of amendment would have gone through?
Yeah, look, at a time when some 30-40% of STEM graduates who are native-born are not working in STEM fields, this would have been devastating to American workers, particularly those who've got some experience in seasoning. Look, we've seen companies like Disney and California Edison fire American workers, and as a condition of severance, they have to train their foreign worker replacements. Now, Ted Cruz has turned around with Jeff Sessions and introduced a bill very recently that would actually tighten up on H-1B and prevent any further increases. You would have to categorize that as a 180-degree flip-flop. And in the end, you know, all these guys, with the exception of Donald Trump, they seem to be in the paymasters of these major donors, Silicon Valley, major corporations. Republican candidates want to compete with Democrats to get Silicon Valley political money. And Mark Zuckerberg and his friends are putting a lot of pressure on Congress to blow out the American worker and basically destroy what's left of the American middle class.
You know, there's another point I want to go to now if we go back to the border and the illegal aliens coming across. I have not heard about this one time in the debates. Maybe about a year ago or a year and a half ago when the big, huge surge was coming through Texas. But you and I know there's a surge every day. But the press called it the surge. Ted Cruz went down to the border with Glenn Beck, who is championing now for him every night, right? And was handing out soccer balls, food, and I don't know what else. I mean, toys, you name it, to illegal aliens that are coming over. Meanwhile, and now it was all money that was donated. It was $2 million worth of donated, and that's what they used it for. But at the same time, as I say, you know, Houston is the #1 city in terms of people who are hungry in America. Why not go and hand out that stuff to the American kids? I mean,
you're right. Look, when they talk about compassion, why does the compassion card never apply to Americans? 1 in 4 American kids now go to bed hungry at night, living below the poverty line. What we're doing is destroying the American economy. You know, the folks come on TV and on the weekend programs, the economy's in trouble because of oil prices. Nonsense. It's because we are importing more foreign workers than the number of new jobs, and we're destroying the wage structure.
But let me ask you this. I mean, you know, he went about that it was, and Dan, you can weigh in on this as well. I want to hear from both of you. He went about that whole thing, I think it was a photo op. He said he was trying to be a humanitarian about it, but actually what he's doing is he's enticing more illegal immigration.
Absolutely.
Because you know that Sally from Mexico or Sally from El Salvador turned around, took a shot, sent it back to her cousin with her iPhone and said, hey, look, they're handing out soccer balls at the border. Dan?
Well, look, in 2011, Ted Cruz flat out said with force and vigor of conviction that the 14th Amendment requires all illegal alien children born here to illegal aliens, to be citizens, and he didn't sound like anybody who was about to lift a finger to change that status quo. All of a sudden now in Iowa, he was talking about, you know, 14th Amendment citizenship, have to change it. And you see this pattern. Of course, with Marco Rubio, you saw when he was in the Senate, he was never going to support amnesty, and then he got into Congress and he started working on the Gang of Eight. The thing we can take some consolation, though, is that probably for the first time since the early 1990s, immigration is something getting serious attention in the primaries. And actually, these candidates are beginning to flesh out some serious policy discussions, talking about E-Verify, weighing in on border security. The big question for the American people are these guys serious?
Yeah.
Well, but if they're serious, here's the deal. E-Verify by itself won't do the job either. How many agents are going to go out there, and how many agents are going to investigate immigration fraud that gives green cards and employment authorization to aliens who enter the United States? In fact, there was a 9/11 commission that made it clear that immigration fraud was the key issue where the embedding and entry of aliens into the United States was concerned. And what frustrates me the most, I testified at a hearing about immigration and visa fraud 4.5 years before 9/11. If the Clinton administration had taken that issue seriously, 9/11 could not have happened.
You know, we're in a situation right now, I mean, as a business owner, and then who hired 1,000 people in my day, and somebody who's done the films that I've done along the border and throughout the country, and I've seen the impact of immigration. Do you agree with me, Dan, that immigration, both illegal and mass immigration at this point, is the #1 problem facing this country? I have less than a minute.
Look, everything about the political campaign demonstrates voters are alienated from the global elites who believe that they know better. They're all supposed to profit from the information age, and it hasn't happened. Immigration is front and center, the major issue fueling that voter alienation, because they've discovered that these global elites, they don't care about American families, hardworking Americans in this country anymore, and they're willing to subordinate the interests of Americans to some massive flow of immigration. We need basically to phase out most immigration for about 30 years.
I've got 10 seconds.
It's about national security as well. Look at the 9/11 Commission report. Unless you want to enforce the laws effectively, you're literally and figuratively opening the doors to the next terrorist attack.
You know, I like Ted Cruz. I like the fact that he stands up for the Constitution. But when it comes to immigration, which is the #1 issue in America, I don't care what anybody else says, it touches everything. Education, health, national security, the culture. I just don't know where he stands, and it makes me very uncomfortable.